Next up, I get to introduce your keynote speaker, a legend in the music industry so many times that I'm sure it's changed from records to cassettes to CDs to whatever fuck is going on right now. Let's look at the future together with Mark Reeder!
1, 2. Thank you. Thank you. My first steps into the world of entertainment was when I was a 7-year-old child in Manchester. I appeared on British television, and I became obsessed by music as a child. I loved the sound of strings and fuzzy guitars. Every morning, I would ogle at the guitar on the cornflakes packet. And I dreamed of owning a guitar, but you need to collect 250 box tops to get a guitar, and I ate a lot of cornflakes. Yeah. My parents weren't rich, and I needed money to buy records, and so I ran errands to do jobs to earn money so I could buy records. As a teenager, I went to gigs, and I wanted to play in a group, but I needed a guitar. And so I worked in a record shop, and I discovered electronic music and punk. And my obsession became my life. In 1978, I came to Berlin just to buy some krautrock records, and I never left. I discovered a place like no other. I wanted thrills, danger, excitement, and the music to go along with it. And Berlin had it all. You didn't need much to survive here. Everything was subsidized, rents were cheap, and there were lots of spaces. But somehow, I still had to make a living to be able to do the things that I wanted to do, which was to make music. Now, being in Berlin, I was asked to promote my mate's band in Manchester, and so I became their promoter for a band called Joy Division. No one was interested in this band and their music. Not least at the beginning, they weren't anyway. But I learned something from that experience too. And eventually, I formed my own band and became part of the 80s avant-garde music scene here in Berlin. And I stepped into the entertainment business, and that became my job. But there weren't so many venues to play in Walding, West Berlin of the 1980s. So I still had to do other things to make ends meet. I was invited to manage an all-girl band called Malaria, and I became their sound engineer. I had no experience of being a sound engineer, I'd never done it before. I had no experience of being a manager, I'd never done that before. But I learnt, and it paid the rent. I wanted to make records and travel to the east. So I worked as a bouncer in a club called The Loft, up Nondorfplatz. And it paid for studio time. And in 1983, I became the sound engineer for a West German punk band called Die Toten Hosen. In between tours, I was asked by British television to make TV programs about our avant-garde music scene of West Berlin. But I thought, it's not only about West Berlin, it's about both sides of the wall. I made friends in the Communist East and helped them to put on the first illegal punk concerts in the batteries went out. Prague and Budapest. And I did it because I wanted to make my Eastie friends happy, to feel forgotten. And I certainly didn't do that for money. Stasi became, and they classed me as subversive decadent. And to monitor me and my subversive activities, they offered me a job. In the last months of 1989, they invited me to produce an album for an East Berliner new wave band in East Germany, in East Berlin, just as East Germany is starting to fall apart. Unknown to us all, we were making the last album of East Germany. In 1990, I started my own record label, MFS, Masterminded for Success. MFS means Ministerium für Staatssicherheit. I like the 3 letters. I wanted to change the meaning of the 3 letters and turn it into something positive. And so I called it Masterminded for Success. I'd never been a record label manager before, never done that in my life before. I'd never even worked at a record label. I had no experience, but I just did it the way I thought it should be done. We were at the cusp of a new musical era, a revolutionary new sound called techno. No one had anything to go off. It was new. And clubbing was in its infancy. And I wish I had a microphone that bloody worked. Yeah. Went along. Yeah. We had no template to run this like we have today. We have a template. You can see how like places like this have existed. But it became quite a lucrative business for Berlin. And my label was successful and my artists were successful. But it became an office job. Now, I'm not a person who works in an office. I'm definitely not that kind of guy, right? I wasn't happy with writing contracts and negotiating deals. I knew it was part of the job, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. So at 50, I decided I would pack it in and just go back into the studio to make music. Because I missed creating music. And it was my choice to return to the studio and become a music producer. And once again, my life was thrown into uncertainty. Can I make a living from making music? I realized I could if I didn't set the bar too high. And I think we're all faced with this question, especially if we don't have someone to financially support us. Thankfully, in Berlin, we can apply for funding and support, but it's not like that in other countries. So how can we navigate this obstacle? Certainly, my original thoughts for this talk have suddenly taken on a completely different turn following the election results in America. And uncertainty has now become written in very big block capital letters. My topic of how can we safeguard our music creator economy suddenly looked even more serious. Cultural budgets cuts affect us all and all aspects of our entertainment industry. So what does that mean to us? Why are we creators? We're always willing to compromise and accept the minimum. As musicians and producers, we're all facing the same situation. People in this business generally, yeah. So how do we safeguard this economy? An economy which is already dishing out pennies for our creativity. Yeah. Especially forces and people's incomes determine when the entertainment is the least important thing on their menu. We experienced a taste of what that could be like only a few years ago. During the pandemic, we all saw how easily our livelihoods could be affected. Clubs closed, people lost their jobs, and everyone rushed to grab a subscription of Spotify. For you, young, new musicians entering into this creative world, we never felt more vulnerable. Our lives were thrown into turmoil, and it was way beyond anything that we could control. So what did we learn from this? We learned that in times of adversity, culture becomes very important. Imagine being locked down with no music or film. We also learned that there's no job security in the entertainment business. When clubs and venues close, there is nowhere to play. People stream our music, we don't get paid. I also hope that we also learned that nothing lasts forever, because somehow I knew that already too. I'm old enough to have experienced musical trends of the 60s, and most of those only lasted a few years before they were replaced by something else. It was always exciting to see how a new musical trend defined a generation through its music, fashion, and ideology. Musicians were able to make a comfortable living from performing and the record sales. As a teenager, I entered into this music business working in a record shop and playing in a punk band. And after moving to West Berlin, I found I could actually live my dream. I'm still living my dream, actually. When I was asked to present this talk, I thought, I'm probably the least qualified person to talk about money or economics because in the music business, because I'm a musician and a music producer and not an economist. Yeah. For I, like most of you, I'm an independent freelancer dependent on other people's money. I've never worked for or been signed to a major record label, and I've certainly never had a hit record. But it's never been about that. It was all about survival. So one question we have to ask ourselves is, why are you doing this? Why do you want to enter into this business? What do you wish to achieve? What are your dreams and your expectations? And are you prepared for the struggle ahead? Are you willing to take risks? I was. I've managed to make a living out of making music and being in the entertainment business, and that is all I ever wanted. But even I have been affected by the lack of money in music, and I've been forced to adapt. So being an independent in the music business is not easy, and it never was, and no one ever said it would be. But at least today, you have plenty of references that you can draw upon and learn from, and you have to learn from the warnings of history. When you make that decision to be self-employed, it's always a step into the unknown. It's a thrilling unknown, fraught with challenges. It's a bit like the mythical story of Jason and the Argonauts searching for the golden fleece. The skeletons are like the problems you have to face and fight to get to the golden fleece. But it was the life that I chose for myself, and I wanted to be the master of my own destiny, to live my life and live my dream how I wanted. And I didn't dream that big. I'm not too much of a realist. My dream was just to be able to make a living and from making music, and so that I could stay here in Berlin. Everything else was a bonus. It hasn't always worked out exactly to plan, whenever it was necessary. Sometimes you have to do other things to pay the rent, because it doesn't mean to say you failed, because it's not failure. It becomes part of your struggle, and it becomes part of the story. So use that to motivate. It's a bit like the clicking on the accept all cookies button on the web. With this choice, you enter into a lot of other things that you don't exactly. Insecurity. We have to microphone. To be able to navigate through all the obstacles that are thrown at you, that is what I consider success. Because success doesn't come on a silver plate. You still have to work for it. You still have to be creative. It appears that everyone I talk to in the music industry is having problems and suffering some kind of major upheavals. Because even in the major record label arena, budgets are being cut and people are being made redundant. So you can't expect really anything from them. Many labels and promoters look at likes before booking you or listening to your music. Some promoters don't even care about the music that you make. I could tell you to make merchandise and sell it at gigs, press your own records, but you also need money to be able to do these things. As a record label owner, I'm constantly asked 3 questions. What is the next big thing? What's the next trend? You know, I'm not Nostradamus. Yeah, I could predict something, but it's not my thing to do. You know, I can only go by what I like, and in the end, what I release on my label or whatever is my decision. The most asked question is, how can I make money from music? Gosh, I wish there was an instant answer to that, you know. The only way I can see it is that we work and we be creative and we work hard. We have to be productive. We have to make as much music as we can. We have to play as often as live as we can. And then we can be selective as what we release. We don't have to release everything. The musical playground today is very crowded, and the slice of the pie has become very, very thin. So think hard about how you want to be seen and heard and be remembered. What have you got to offer? Because in this modern world, it seems like everyone can make and release music. It's never been easier to jump on some already successful style. If you come and say you make house and techno, well, you can stand at the back of the queue like at Berghain, yeah? Because creating something new and different is always challenging, and it has to be thought through. Can your concept be entertaining enough to make money? Maybe. Having financial success has something to do with a bit of luck too. with the right microphone and right sounding song. Yeah. It's the collective nerve, you know. But you don't write a hit. Someone else decides that for you. I've never made that music for that objective, actually. I only made music so people could like listen to it and decide whether they liked it or not, and hopefully buy it. You have to create an image for yourself and to present something that you can market on your own terms. But in your desire to have a TikTok hit, don't forget it's all about the music in the end. In one way, the musical landscape hasn't changed so much from when I started in the 70s. You had to work hard to be worthy of making a record. But with the dawn of the digital age, we celebrated the digital platforms and embraced its instant gratification without fully understanding the long-term consequences of our enthusiasm. It all seemed so easy. No one gave any consideration towards payment, and now we are aware. Musicians' revenues from streaming are already nowhere near a living wage. So why do we let ourselves be used and duped and manipulated? Because everyone likes something for free. And streaming subscription gives the appearance that music is now free. You pay, you play, you forget. Everything's on your phone, instant gratification. But streaming also steals. It steals that magical moment of being in a place or situation when the music makes its mark on your life. Do you remember when you bought your first physical album, a record or CD? Or do you remember the moment when you streamed the latest Ellen Alien album? Yeah? Do you fuck? You don't remember that. And what do you do when your favourite album's taken down off your favourite digital platform? Yeah, you'll be wishing you bought a physical copy then, yeah? Because physical is an embodiment of your music. It means something. A few years ago in the music industry told us that there was a vinyl revival, but they too became too greedy. And the cost of making a record has skyrocketed so that the majors have priced themselves out of that lucrative income stream by hiking up the price of vinyl. Remember, making a physical record keeps people in work, and your income is much, much higher. Major labels have invested in digital streaming and are now starting to feel the downside of that investment. Their income is slowly stagnating. What will they do once they've exhausted their back catalogue but haven't invested in nurturing new long-term talent? Will they re-release the Justin Bieber back catalogue on vinyl? Right. Then there's the question of AI invading our creative space. How can we protect ourselves from the threat of AI stealing away our already dwindling income? All musicians should be on the barricades. In any other industry, the workers would go on strike and ask for a pay rise. But we are music people. We're not auto workers. Yet we are creative, and we have to use that creativity in working around this problem. For AI is only as good as what we put in it, and what we put in it is our music. Shouldn't we really be generating income from that too? If AI models are stealing our sounds and structures, we should be getting revenue from that. Otherwise, it's intellectual property theft. AI is not going to create a new musical trend, because no matter how advanced or creative it might be, it still can't react like a human can to political or social changes. It certainly won't voice off its anger and frustration at being ripped off. And what happens once the novelty of AI wears off? How can we minimize the threat and improve on the situation? We have to use the AI as our creative process as a tool. Maybe one of you has a different solution. All suggestions are welcome. Yeah. And of course, when it comes to protecting our music income, we have to address streaming. According to the IFPI, almost 670 million people were using paid music streaming subscription by the end of 2023. And streaming revenues are now considerably higher than digital download sales everywhere, really. Yeah, right. So that's what I read from the IFPI. On the digital income generated in 2023, 32% of digital streaming generated $19.3 billion. $19.3 billion. 32% went to YouTube and TikTok. Radio income was a mere 17%. It all sounds impressive. But what does that all mean to you? Is it reflected in your bank statement? No, is it fuck? Because it seems that all the wrong people are making all the money. It costs them almost nothing to do it, because in our desire to be heard, we are willingly giving them our music. Income from physical sales is only 9%, but your cut from a physical release is far higher than any other income source, especially if you can sell your records at gigs. I think everyone by now understands that Spotify does not pay artist royalties according to pay-per-play or pay-per-stream. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we got €1 instead of a 0.03 cents? Shouldn't we all be demanding that? Shouldn't we see digital as our marketing tool? It uses our music to market someone else's product. And they are using our music for next to nothing. If Mercedes-Benz asked you for a track, would you expect them to pay a nice fee? I'm sure you would. We are told we can monetize our music on YouTube if we generate enough clicks. Has anyone here received a huge payout from YouTube, generated revenue? Yeah? Put your hand up if you have, you know. Over the past few years, copyright societies like The Gamer have realized this is a problem and are trying to create ways of retrieving lost income, because your lost income is their lost income. And this is where AI can be beneficial to us through monitoring where our music is played. It sounds like a step in the right direction, and there's people here who are going to talk about this later, about how The Gamer have an influence. However, we have to face a reality that streaming is the way that most people listen to music today, and it is probably will be in the future. Collectively, we all need to demand a change in the royalty payment structure of streaming and platforms like YouTube. Even digital distributors demand and take a huge portion of your already minimal income. But if you're not on a streaming platform, how do you reach a wider audience? It's a double-edged sword. As musicians, what leverage do we have? We're not in the league of Taylor Swift or the Beatles and Bruce Springsteen, where we can demand personal changes to our streaming income. So what will you decide to make money from your music? As a teenager, I worked some horrible jobs just to get money to live my dream, and I always had to work around that obstacle to make a living. You might have to create music that simply pays the rent, but isn't that all what it's about at the end? Making music to make a living from your music? Because to me, it is all about the music. To some degree, you can predict the future, but you have to create that future for yourself. And that is entirely in your hands. Because we have something that they all need, and that is music. Because without our music, Spotify wouldn't exist. We can't allow these platforms and distributors to dominate us and rip us off any longer. We need somehow to create a fair-paying alternative. And maybe one of you has an idea lurking deep inside of you and a great solution to solve this question. So don't be frightened to present it, no matter how improbable it might sound. Because whatever you decide, you have to believe in yourself and what you do. Because in the end, I believe you can live your dream, as it's only music that will save us. Thank you.